Hi, everybody. Welcome to the swamp. Look, I got Mel all to myself.
Yay.
I don't get that very often. Of course, this is not a particular show. I had today off and I was like, I want to do a live with somebody. I don't want to do it by myself. So I sent Mel an email and said, you want to come on?
Because we love
I was
time.
I was hoping to get Kevin on with us, Kevin Chandler, but he was having that dental work done
Oh,
today.
that's right. I forgot about that.
And so he was like, "There's no way." I said, "Don't worry about it, dude." I said, "We'll catch up another day." Um, we've been trying to get together to do a show together for a couple of years since he got started. It just our schedules are so opposite. We just never could work it out. So I said, "I got another Monday off coming Memorial Day. Maybe that'll work." So, how are you doing? We are so glad to have you back.
Thank you. I'm good. I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm being very kind to my colon. It was hard Easter because all that good food. And we went by my cousin's Saturday. They had Easter on Saturday. And then I went to my Greek friends Sunday. I want to say hi, Panos and Paniota. They're here from the town of Levidi in Peloponneso,
Hello.
visiting. Um, but the food was, I love Italian and Greek food. Those are my favorites. But the food was incredible, but I couldn't hardly eat anything. But, the Greek potatoes are incredible. I had a little piece of lamb, not much, and some fasolacchia. Those are the braised Greek green beans. Those were so good. So, I can't say that I starved. I had all kinds of goodies. And then I could have the galactoburico. That is like a custard, and it's got phyllo dough with like either honey or syrup on it.
Oh, interesting.
It's really good. So
I don't know that much about Greek food. I mean, Italian food, I guess whatever Olive Garden offered.
well, we left.
I don't know a lot about I've never really eaten authentic Italian food.
One of these
The
days,
closest we have to it in this house is spaghetti. So,
one of these days when we meet face to face, I will make I will make you some authentic Italian food. How's that?
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that.
It's not like what you
I'll
get at all.
probably eat till I explode.
Here you go. That's the idea.
And then when you come down here, I'm going to take you to a Cajun restaurant, let you eat some real Cajun cooking. So,
Yum.
and we got the Festival International de Acadians this week and this weekend. So,
What is that?
it's an international festival. We host it every year here in Lafayette, and it's musical groups from around the world who come and perform.
Yum.
It's like a week-long festival, and it's when they redid downtown a couple of decades back. They took one section that the city had bought and they turned it into a big like stage area. They built a pavilion and stage and all that so that people had a place to dance or they could just sit and watch. And the musicians weren't having to come up with their own makeshift stages. They actually had a professional stage to get on. And I know my friend Julian, the one that does the Mardi Gras music that y'all all like, he'll be playing this weekend, but I've already got other obligations. I'm bummed out. I'll miss him. And but he yeah, so there's all kinds of people that I don't know how many people are going to show up this year though, because we get a lot of groups from like the African countries and the Hispanic countries and whatnot. And
I love Latin music. Oh my God. I love
yeah, yeah, it's I mean, it's really good music. It's held in the park, and then it's like part of it's in the park, which is across the street from my office, and then a few blocks down is the rest of it with the big pavilion downtown. And all the local businesses are all in on it and they offer special stuff, for a special like after party type things and meals and whatnot. People could go because it's fun because you can watch Canadian people, French people, and Cajun people all stand together and try to talk French to each other, and nobody understands anybody because they're talking three different languages in effect. There's a couple of words here and there that's the same, but totally different.
Well, there's a dialect of French Acadian or Cajun. They were actually from France, and they settled in Canada, and they were kicked out of Canada.
Right. They were from France, and then they were in Nova Scotia in Canada. And then when they kind of got run out of Nova Scotia, they came down the Mississippi River until they got to the Gulf, and they landed here in the area. And so you have more of the Cajun people that are more west of the Mississippi, and then you have the Creole people that are around New Orleans and stuff. And there's mix all around, but there's a lot of native tribes that were here before either group got here. But
now somebody is speaking Creole and somebody is speaking Cajun. Can they understand each other?
Pretty much, it's pretty similar, but there are some things that are different.
I saw a thing on YouTube. It was somebody from France, and she was listening to people speak Cajun, and she could understand that. Some of the vowels had shifted, but they were speaking some other kind. I don't think it was Creole. It was something else the guy was speaking, and she was like, that was a little difficult. So
yeah, I know both of my grandfathers. Yeah,
is it Creole more black and Cajun?
Yeah. Creole is more of the black and the African communities that came over. And whereas the Cajun is more of the French from the Acadians that came down. And so they're kind of two different groups, but they do mix and merge in some areas. And there are other areas, where you have both groups living together. The music is very similar. Most people can't tell it apart, but there is a little bit of a difference.
I like Cajun music and Creole music.
Thank goodness for Cajun and Creole music, because that's what saved our language. Because back in the late 40s and the 50s, my mom used to talk about it when she was in school. They had state rules that they couldn't speak French in school. You would get punished and sent home. And most kids grew up speaking French first and English second, and if you got caught speaking French, you would get in serious trouble, or you would get, sent home for the day. And they did a real, there was like a real effort to try to erase the language, thinking if we erase the language, then we erase
the culture,
the cultures of it, but because of the Cajun and Creole music, the language stayed, because you got to know what you're singing. When I was a little girl, I understood a lot of it. I could speak a little bitty bit of it, but then I was away for so long that now it's completely gone. I keep saying I'm going to take a class and relearn Cajun French, but I just haven't had the time.
Learn French, it's the same, there's just an accent difference. It was the same in Hawaii. When Hawaii became a state in the 1950s, my teacher, Mahialani, she didn't speak much Hawaiian, because when they went to school, she spoke Pidgin, but she didn't speak Pidgin. It was always proper English.
Right.
When they would speak Hawaiian or Pidgin, they would get beat in school. They were told, speak English. So the language was almost lost. Until 1970s, when the singer Iz came along, and he started singing in Hawaiian, and it was this whole resurgence of the Hawaiian language.
Exactly, because there's so much. You may know the basic concept of the language. It's based off of this or that or the other, with a few changes here and there, but it's the nuances of how you pronounce certain words. It's can make a whole different meaning to something. And
now in the schools, Hawaiian, certain schools, the emergence program is taught for, I think, half a day. So
yeah, they started that when my son started school in elementary school. Now he's 41 now, but when he started school, they were really big into putting French immersion classes in all the elementary schools. It was a voluntary thing. You weren't forced to take the class, but if you had French-speaking family, or if you were interested in learning it, you could take the class and you would learn the Cajun language. I know both of my grandfathers fought in World War II. Now, one fought in the Navy in the Pacific, but my other grandfather was in the Army, and they sent him to Europe because he was a little Cajun man, and they thought, good, you can go talk to the French and they'll know what's going on. And he got there and they didn't understand each other. He was like, I understood the Spaniards better than I understood the Frenchmen, but
Well, Hawaii,
but it helped.
was so this whole immersion happened, and but now the Hawaiians that they speak, they're not native speakers. The native speakers, they speak a little differently, but the old Hawaiian was metaphor, and the new Hawaiian is more like English translated into Hawaiian, because of some of the axes are the same. So there's a lot of people now that are bringing back the older Hawaiian, which is kind of cool. But it was metaphor. I don't know if they'll get the metaphors back. A lot of it was lost because there was no written language. They passed it down through hula and chanting. But
exactly. Well, it's like with the Cajun and the Creole language, a lot of it got passed down through the music,
Like an old Hawaiian, pule means to chant, pule. In modern Hawaiian, pule means to pray. Or like a kahuna pule was somebody who specialized in chanting, and nowadays it would be like a bishop in the church. So it kind of,
it shifts, and it does shift. I think with any language, it kind of shifts over the years. I mean, there's English words that mean one thing now that 50 years ago meant something totally different,
Well, if you're in Great Britain, and if you say sidewalk, they're like, I don't know what it means. The pavement is the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Or if you say
between the street and the driveway is the opposite there in Ireland and England than it is here.
Or you don't say a potato chip. They have no clue. They're called crisps. Crisp.
Right. And biscuits or cookies.
Biscuits or cookies. And plum soles or tennis shoes. Or let's see. Your pants. That means your underwear. They say trousers. Yeah. Or the crosswalk. They have no. If you say crosswalk, they're the zebra crossing, the zebra walk because it's striped.
Right. Which was made famous by the Beatles.
There you go. So anyway, yeah, but
walking across barefoot, no less.
I said that the Pope died. He was a true leader, I think, of equality, diversion. DEI, that's according to Trump, you can't even say that anymore. Remember before with Trump, it was Antifa. He blamed it's Antifa, and now
everything was Antifa's fault.
Now it's woke and DEI, and he doesn't even have a clue. But I think this Pope, he did not live in the papal apartment in the Vatican. He lived in more of an austere apartment. I don't know if it was outside the Vatican, but. So
he didn't believe in all that opulence and all that. He thought that was
for the poor, or for the marginalized, and he was very humble.
And I know he was the first Franciscan priest.
I did not know he was a Franciscan. Thus the name.
Well, that's where he decided he wanted to be Pope Francis after Francis of Assisi.
Right,
is what he had said, but he was a Franciscan monk in Argentina. Yeah.
And he wants to be buried not in the Vatican, but in the church in Argentina.
Yeah, he's going back home. So
he had a devotion, Blessed Mother. It's funny. When I woke up this morning, I heard that he had passed away, and I was really sad, even though we had predicted it. But I think the next Pope will be a reformer. But I had this kind of vision in my head of, I saw this woman, and she had long, beautiful, dark hair, and her skin was more like almost an ebony, and she had these piercing brown eyes, and she was just holding him and hugging him. And I thought, that's Our Lady, because Our Lady would not have blue eyes and blonde hair. There's no way.
No.
She was a dark skin from the Middle East. And so that I was like, oh my goodness, he passed right over. He's with Our Lady.
Oh yeah, I felt when the minute I heard it this morning, I felt like he went straight to the head of the class.
Bingo.
No detention time for him. He went straight over, so
I like St. Francis of Assisi because of the animals,
yeah,
I like St.
exactly.
Francis. It was St.
Yeah,
Francis.
he wasn't Opus Dei or any of those extremists. He was a very progressive pope, considering he was a pope. um, and there were a lot of his policies that I did not agree with. I mean, I left the Catholic Church decades ago, even though some things kind of stick with you no matter what. But it's like I still have trouble eating meat on Friday. And I still tend to genuflect when I go by a Catholic church. It's just like automatic, and I don't even realize I'm
I
doing it.
genuflect when I go in, but I think
Yeah.
he was a pope. He was a pope for the people. He was really opened his arms to LGBTQ. He really told the
Absolutely.
American bishops about them supporting this whole Trump and the deportation things.
Yeah, you're not happy with that.
He wrote that a letter to all the American bishops telling them, the church would not tolerate that. The church essentially is
Well,
about
didn't
acceptance.
he defrock a couple of priests for being extremist right wing over here in the States? It's several years ago, but it
That I do
seems
not.
like I read something about it. I'm gonna have to look it up and see.
I don't know, but he was very humble, and uh, he met with people that were different. People from all over, and it
Yeah.
was kind of neat.
Well, they said that he regularly would take his meals in the hall where they would feed poor people and homeless people, and he would go and eat with them
Yes.
so that he would be amongst them. And he would go to the prisons and wash the prisoners' feet. He would make regular trips to the prison. And I was like, there's a lot of people that once they get up to that level, no matter what it is you're doing, they're not interested in what they're doing for those below them.
He was.
Like I said, I didn't agree with a lot of his policies, but the thing I really liked about him was that if somebody challenged him on a position, he would sit and listen to their side, and then he would go into study on it and prayer on it. And there were a lot of things I watched him come back out with a changed attitude on it. It was like, okay, he's willing to say, I had it wrong. We're going to do it this way instead. It was like, that takes a very devout and secure person to do that.
He did not put up with bigotry or injustice or racism or anything like that. I don't know how it works in the church, but I think they have the funeral first, and then the College of Cardinals meet the conclave.
I'm not sure,
bishop, but I think not all bishops are cardinals, but all cardinals are bishops,
right?
And so they meet. See the movie Conclave, but it's really cool.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm waiting for it to come on Amazon Prime because then I go.
It is a really neat movie.
I
think that the next pope, as I keep saying, I think will be a reformer.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody younger, probably in their late 60s, early 70s, and it's not going to be a conservative pope. I don't think, not with what's going on in the world. So
I don't think so. I mean, he may not be quite as open-minded as Francis was, but then again, he may be more open-minded. So
I think it's somebody who's more open-minded, but Francis wasn't real. He was outspoken, but not boisterous, and he was very humble.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The next pope is going to be a little bit more outspoken on things.
He wasn't. Francis didn't. He didn't like to get in people's faces to challenge them. He would have a discussion with someone and sit down and talk with them about things. I watched him do that for years. I thought, how wonderful is that? Someone at that level who's willing to sit down and talk to people, and
he was a genuine leader. I love this pope. He's going to be a hard act to follow.
He is. Whoever gets chosen next they've got big shoes to fill.
I see you have a charismatic pope, but somebody that's not full of themselves or full of their ego. Same Pope John Paul II when he died, that was a hard act to follow. And then I think it was Benedict, and that was like he just was. I didn't like him. I didn't dislike him. He was just kind of there, And then he resigned, actually.
Yeah, I remember that. It was like a shock. It was so unheard of.
Right.
And because I still have several good friends and family that are Catholic, so I hear from them on certain things. And I know it was when I woke up this morning and I heard the news, I was really devastated, like you were talking about, really sad about it. And then a few minutes later, it was like the feeling came over me, like, yeah, there's nothing to be sad about. He's where he wants to be, And
yeah, that's true. But we needed him, the world leader. I mean, he really was a world leader, and a lot of other world leaders probably should walk in his footsteps. I'd like to live my life that way, except I'm too mouthy. So, shall we get started on
I absolutely, but I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot more changes happening with the church, and not just the Catholic Church. Hopefully, the other churches, other religions as well, to go back to their roots of being service-led and service-minded. It's so desperately needed, especially today. So, let's see here. We got us a few questions. Laura had a question asking if SCOTUS is starting to turn on Trump, will they take away his immunity?
Well, my feeling is, or I intuit, I see, whatever, everything we're talking about is psychic. I feel like behind the scenes they're probably thinking, some of them anyway, not Clarence Thomas. I mean, there's a few of the justices, they're so far up as behind that if he'd stopped, they'd have brown on their nose. But
absolutely,
I think behind the closed doors are kind of like, okay, we've opened Pandora's box. Now, how do we get the beasties back in?
Yeah.
And so they're disagreeing with him on a lot of things, because a lot of things that he's doing are so against the Constitution. And a lot of these justices claim to be totally constitutional, what the Constitution says. So, they got to watch it. I don't think that politics should be in the court. And I think
that
at some point they're going to have justices that are impartial, and that's kind of hard to do. But
I think when they implement term limits,
yes,
and perhaps change the way they're chosen so that it's not up to just one person.
Well, they're calling for to get rid of Chief Justice Roberts, but as much as I'm not fond of him, he does stand up for things that sometimes are against Trump. And so, but I do see some justices impeached within the next 3 or 4 years. It could be Alito, and I don't know about Clarence Thomas, but another one. But I
just keep seeing Thomas gone, like just quit or whatever. I've not seen
I still see him in trouble. So even if he resigns from the court or whatever, there's still going to be investigations into, the monies he took that he shouldn't have. But when with these deportations without what's the due process? 7-2, the dissenting one, I think who was it?
It was Alito and it was Thomas. Those were the two that
dissented. Well, Alito dissented because he said that it should go through the lower courts first.
Yeah.
Because now Trump, everything he wants, it's just goes to the Supreme Court automatically. And I do think that it should go up through the courts. But this was an emergency. This was what he was doing was so unconstitutional. You're depriving people of due process, and that's in the Constitution. You can't You know, I mean, he's going to
Pick
keep.
and choose bits and pieces that you like and ignore the rest, you
Well,
know.
and then he's given the middle finger to the court, because when they told him to bring the guy back, then Pam Bondi lied, and she said, well, the president of El Salvador won't bring him back, which was a lie, because then it came
Yeah.
out that, you know, Trump was paying the president down there to keep him. And, you know,
$6 million at
right,
that,
the court's going
you
to
know.
tell, you know, and what about the Venezuelan hairdresser? I see him coming back here too. So I think, you know, at some point the courts have to be able to enforce, because otherwise Trump can say, I'm not doing it. And I think we're in a little bit of a constitutional crisis because of it. But
Well,
as
I
someone
know
is gone, I see a president that is, you know, the president of El Salvador, people kind of like. I mean, certain Latin American countries do, but now they're seeing him for what he's worth, a dictator. And I see him overturned. And I think at some point the Americans saying, let them go. You know, if we have to pay you,
yeah,
we'll, and if you don't, we will send in forces to get them. So
yeah, exactly. Well, I know when I started, I mean, and I've looked at and read on this particular topic several times. We all have over the last 100 days, whatever it's been. I've seen Roberts having a real kind of come to Jesus moment internally, because he's seeing his legacy getting flushed down the toilet, because they thought that when they gave Trump immunity that they were going to have a control puppet to do what they wanted to do. And they're not happy at all with the crap that he's been pulling, and the fact that he's been blatantly thumbing his nose, not just at the other courts, but at them as well. And I think it's going to cause them. I haven't seen definitively if they're going to take away the immunity, but what I keep picking up is they're going to like rein it in and make it a lot more narrow as to what it will cover.
Well, I think they realize now, because when I heard their decision on that whole immunity thing, I think it was Kavanaugh or one of them said, well, we have to think of future presidents. It's like, wait a minute, you have to rule. You don't have to, but you should be ruling on the merits of the case, which they didn't do.
No.
And now they're realizing we have created a monster. And I don't know if they can just snap their fingers and say we're taking away immunity. I think they have to have a case regarding that.
I don't. Now, I heard somebody say that the other day, and it was one of the pundits. So, you know, and I'm not sure how accurate they are on their facts, but they were talking. Somebody had asked about, can they change their minds and take it away? And they were saying, well, sort of, kind of, yes, but they don't have to have a case come to court to do it. They can call for some kind of a special meeting amongst them, and they can go in and change some of their rulings that they've made in the past. Now, I don't know how that works, because I don't know enough about the Supreme Court.
I don't know, but what I'm saying is they're going to back down. They might have a case come to them about immunity on presidential stuff and vice presidential immunity, but I see them saying, wait a minute. You know, at first they said, well, if it's presidential, he's immune. If it's personal, he's not immune. And who's going to sift through all that? That was the biggest bunch of bull hockey I've ever heard. But I think they will reverse their decision on it to a degree. They're going to say, no, he does not have the right to give, you know, kingly decrees.
Yeah.
Are presidential orders that are unconstitutional. And if he's told to stop doing it and he continues, then he's breaking the law, because the courts have, or he's in contempt. The courts have told him not to. And he's not immune from knowingly doing that. And he's knowingly doing it because the courts have told him don't do it.
Yeah.
And so I think they put the word in knowingly. That's what'll go in there. And he's knowingly defying the court. So I see them really honing, you know, what constitutes presidential misconduct.
Yeah.
And he's not immune.
I know when one of the first rules that the Supreme Court set down that he basically gave him the middle finger for, And I saw Glenn Kirshner on YouTube talking about it. And so in the comments, I made a comment about, well, when is somebody going to call the U.S. Marshals to start arresting people?
Yeah, but Trump
For
controls that.
not following the court. And a bunch of people jumped on me and was like, oh no, Pam Bondi will control that because it's under the Department of Justice. Well, then yesterday I saw a video with Glenn Kirshner and another lawyer, and they were talking, well, sort of yes, but if especially like the Supreme Court comes back and says, okay, we have a Department of Justice that's breaking the laws and a president that's breaking the laws, they can, according to what they were saying on this show, they can then give that ruling to the marshals and say it's time for arrest. Now, that then, of course, leaves it up to the marshals. Are we going to follow what the courts tell us, or are we going to follow what the DOJ tells us? Because part of the oath that you take when you're serving in office is that, especially with the military and FBI, CIA, and all of them, one of their commitments that they make is that if they are given an illegal order to do something, it's their responsibility and it's their right to say, no, I can't do that. It's against the law.
And they also take the oath to uphold the Constitution.
Right. And first and foremost, not a person, but they can legally not follow through on that order because it's an illegal order. It's against the Constitution or against the laws of the land. So I guess we'll see what they wind up doing. But
my point is, Trump knows better, and he knows he's breaking the law. And they try these little nuances. Well, you can argue this and argue that. And I see a lot of those lawyers that are, in the DOJ that Pam Bondi is directing. Actually, Trump is directing. That are going to get disbarred. But I see the court redefining that whole thing of presidential immunity, and they need to. They're going to say, no, he's not above the law. And if he, gives thumbs middle finger to a direct court order to tell him stop doing something that's unconstitutional, he continues to do it, then I don't know what that's obstruction of justice. I can name a bunch of things that for him for. And that, then he can be removed from that. I think they're also going to change the whole rule. It's not a law, it's a rule kind of. It's almost like, almost like a courtesy. That's the wrong word, but like a rule that you can't indict a sitting president, but that's not a law. And I see the Supreme Court is going to say, yes, you can indeed indict a sitting president, and that he can be indicted. Well, I think the House has to drop the articles of impeachment, but they're going to say, no, he's not immune from the law. And he's knowingly is the word. And he's knowingly breaking the law because they've told him it's unconstitutional. Right. And you're still doing it. So
they just stopped a whole van full of Venezuelans from being flown out. They literally, somebody called the ICE officers on the bus and said, look, we just got another call from the court saying if those men aren't back where they need to be in Texas, that y'all are going to get arrested for breaking the law.
And the other problem with it is that whole ICE thing is in Louisiana and in Texas. So those, they process them to ship them off, whatever that means. And I think that they need to have federal judges from other jurisdictions hearing these cases, other than ones that Trump put in that are just not going to rule on the merits of the case, and it's going to be rubber stamp, deport.
Right.
But you just hit on something, and my light bulb went off. There's going to be whistleblowers that will come forward and say, even though the Supreme Court told him not to send out any more deportees without due process, it's going to come out that once the court said what they said, and that's why they met in secret, because they knew he would deport a bunch of people illegally. I think that it's still going to come out that even after the court has made this decision, that they've kept it so hush, but they've still deported people. And that story will break, and that's going to break within the next month or two, and that's going to be huge. So I think behind
Absolutely.
still might be deporting a few people. And let's face it, Garcia was not in a Venezuelan gang. How can a
Mm-mm.
Venezuelan hairstylist who's gay be in a gang? They deported him because he had a tattoo. And now they're talking about deporting American citizens. Excuse me, how can you deport
The
us?
homegrowns.
And they're holding them in that prison down there without a trial. So who determines how long you stay there? Once they're turned over to El Salvador, does the president of El Salvador determine that? No. So they're going to
Exactly.
say you can't do that.
Exactly. It's
And that Alien Enemies Act is going to be taken off the books at some point or
yeah. Well,
updated.
it's like with Trump's first term. A lot of the things he did, and you had people up in arms, but he's breaking a law. That's a law. He can't do that. Well, come to find out, technically it wasn't a law. It was a gentleman's agreement that you don't step over certain lines or you don't do certain things. It was like just an agreement amongst those in leadership positions, but there was no official law to it. Now, some things have since had laws written, but I don't think they had a chance to deal with as much stuff as they wanted to. And I've been seeing that there's going to be a lot of this stuff that's going to wind up going into the law book so that future presidents, when somebody says, well, he that's the emollients clause, he can't do that, it's against the law.
Well, what
Technically, it
he's
wasn't
doing,
against
though,
the law when he did it, but they're going to make damn sure it is against the
a
law in
lot
the
of what he's
future.
doing is unconstitutional, and they try to find
Right.
little words to twist it and
It,
turn it. The bottom line is
it's
no,
the loopholes that they're
you don't get
working
to
for.
mold it to what you want it to be.
Right.
You follow what the Constitution says, and if you don't, you're breaking the Constitution. It's breaking the law, if you will, and knowing that you're doing it. I think the one that kind of started that whole enemy invasion thing, it started with the governor of Texas when he said, "Well, all these illegals are invading us," and I think Trump picked up on that, and that's where they
Yeah,
found alien enemies because he used it too in Texas.
absolutely. They've been
I,
doing all
when
kinds of stuff down
they
there.
talked about the crisis at the border, to be honest with you, I don't think there ever really was a crisis at the border. I think
Mm-mm.
it was manufactured by Trump. That's why when the Democrats gave the Republicans what they wanted with that whole immigration package, no, we don't want to do it because Trump said no. And he knew
Right.
he could use this with misinformation to help him win the election. So even when
Well,
the
it's just like,
Republicans what they wanted, no. So I don't think, this is just me speculating, being psychic. Intuitively, I don't think there was ever the crisis at the border that they say there was.
no,
I think it was
it
all
never was there.
misinformation. It was
Our
misinformation.
very MAGA new governor that got elected last year, right after Trump got sworn in, one of the first things he did was he sent a whole um, battalion of our National Guard to Texas to go secure the border and deal with the illegals crossing. And they were there for a while and then came back. And when people started asking them about it, there was a lot of these National Guardsmen that was like, there wasn't anybody there. There wasn't anybody to protect us from. There wasn't anybody trying to break in and do, it was like it was a non existent reason to send them down there. And they were like scratching their heads, going, I don't know what's going on, but that's not happening. So, yeah, and I think there's going to be quite a few whistleblowers that come from the troops that have been sent down there, coming back up and saying they were making this crap up. There wasn't anybody doing anything illegal. That,
Right.
not to the degree that they're saying it is.
That's my whole point.
Um,
I think it was all misinformation. It was all manipulation, and it was put out because they knew they could play on that, and it would give Trump a better chance to win. And that's exactly I don't think he won. I think there was cheating on that too, but it was
Yeah.
misinformation. So,
Yeah.
there's
Exactly.
something here. Can I just bring this up? Gina
Sure.
Gina Del Grotalia. I don't know if I understand the question, but it's in the comments. It says, "Hi all, I'm new here. Hi Gina, welcome aboard. Questions surrounding beginning Christian deconstruction. I want to get
Yeah.
back into the arts after almost 20 years away, but I'm scared I'll be punished by God." Can I touch on that for a second?
Absolutely.
Well, the God that I know is not a punishing God.
Thank you.
It's a very loving, caring God. And it's kind of like, a loving parent that when the child misbehaves, you might say, "Don't do that," but you don't punish them by making them ill or having them lose a loved one or something like that. I don't feel like
Yeah.
God is that cruel. So
No.
God is
No.
very loving and caring. And did you ever stop to think that if you're in the arts, maybe those talents were giving to you in your genes through God? And that if
Yeah.
you don't get back into it, then you're not honoring those talents you have. And maybe that could hurt God's feelings as well. The God I know is a loving, caring God, and He wants all of us to treat each other equally, and with kindness and respect, and do kind acts and help the
A-
less fortunate. I think
And I've always been a
if you
firm
do,
believer that
hold on a minute. I think if you do all those things, then you're not going to, God's not going to get angry. My
mm-mm,
advice is get back into the arts. You'll love
yeah,
it.
he wouldn't give you the talent if he didn't want you to use it.
Correct.
That's what my beliefs have always been when I've come across people that, well, if I do that, God's going to be so angry. I'm like, well, then why did he give you that ability to do that? Why does he make someone smart enough to invent vaccines or to come up with, um, you know, whatever miraculous new thing is designed and thought of and created next? I mean, or the artwork that's done or the music that comes out. Now, maybe it's not our cup of tea, the kind of art or the kind of music, but it's for someone. And God wouldn't give you that talent if He didn't want you to share it.
I find that when people do something, and I think you hit on it, well, it's not, I don't like that art. So I think that people, a lot of times what they do is then they fall to the religion. I don't like that art. And because I don't like it, God doesn't like it either. And you know what? And then the religion would say, well, because we don't like it, God doesn't like it. Sorry, folks, God doesn't work that way.
No,
I
no,
think God is so busy looking over the universe that he or she does not have time. I said he or she does not have
yeah,
time to say, "Oh, I'm really mad because Mary Jane Jim Bob decided that she was going to paint a nude." I don't think God cares about that. It's about God.
exactly.
God is more offended when you don't use it. Well, actually, you're doing a disservice to yourself. And if you're doing
Yeah,
a disservice to yourself by not following your art, then you're doing a disservice to God. So there you have it. That's how
yeah.
I see
No, and I, like I said, I've always been a firm believer that you're not given the abilities or the talent to do something if it's not designed by the universe for you to do.
it. Right.
Whether if you call it God or you call it the universe or you call it spirit or you call it the
Whatever.
force or
Right.
whatever name you want to give it, that's you. You do what's comfortable to you. Um, but I mean, I've channeled Jesus. I've talked to him, and the strongest message that's ever come through from him has just been to love each other.
Right.
That's all we're supposed to
Acceptance,
do is
tolerance,
love each other and take care of each other, and that's all
acceptance,
that matters.
tolerance, inclusion, all of that. Those are Christian values.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
they're world values. It doesn't matter who
they're
you
Hindu values,
who
they're
you
Muslim
believe.
values, they're
Exactly.
Jewish values,
They're
they're
pagan values, they're Wiccan values, they're all, it's
all of the above.
first you do no harm and
Right.
you care and love for others.
Right.
And that's all that we're supposed to do. But that's a great question, Gina. Thanks for asking it. And but yeah, don't buy into that. He's not punishing people because they do artwork. And if somebody else doesn't like your artwork, well, on them.
Tell them to
There's
stick
going to be a
with
lot of
it
others
anyway.
that do.
Tell them to go do their own artwork and leave yours alone.
Exactly.
Lewis just sent me a message. He asked if I've heard that Manuka honey is the best because I take it for my colon. Yes, Kevin, I ordered some and I'm waiting for it to be delivered. So I'm going to take it.
There you go. There you go. Barbie Pomales asked, my question is about the power outage situation in Puerto Rico. I'm like 30% sure 45 will do nothing. What will get this resolved? Okay, I'm in the dark because I'm not aware of what this power outage situation is down there.
He's not going to do anything. I can tell you that right now. He's going to up to the people down there and the government down there to figure it out. If anything, he'll go down there. If they ask for federal aid, they're not going to get it because he said he'd be willing to trade Puerto Rico for Greenland. So what does that tell you? He thinks of Puerto Rico. He's going to be down there throwing. Remember when the hurricane hit? It was down there
throwing paper towels at people, like
paper towel. So what are you going to do? Go down there and throw batteries at people? 40.
It's like when one of those hurricanes came through and he came down here to Louisiana, and some of the coastal Native American cities that were literally under 10 feet of water. And there were people that showed up at this town hall thing that he was doing and saying, what are we supposed to do? We can't even get to our homes. It's underwater. Oh, we'll wait till the water goes down a little bit and then call somebody. You're like, you don't understand. The whole town is underwater, like by 10, 15 feet. There's not going to be the water's going to go down a little bit. We can go home. If we're ever able to go back
There's
home.
not a home to go to anymore. It's destroyed. Hello.
Exactly. Exactly. I have a cousin lives in Lake Charles, got hit by those two big hurricanes that hit Lake Charles a couple of years back. Wound up losing a roof and having a tree in his living room. They're just now getting all of that stuff fixed.
Right.
And because when it happened the first time, it was under Trump's watch, and FEMA just didn't do anything. And then when Biden came in, FEMA suddenly was responding to what was going on, but all of that kind of paperwork and stuff takes time.
Well, remember also they usually bring in FEMA right away, but the problem is all those budgets have been cut. A lot of FEMA employees are no longer employed.
Yeah, so he's disbanded FEMA.
Take care of it. In other words, it boils down to, I keep saying, supposedly Marie Antoinette said this. I don't know if she really said it or not, but let them eat cake. Let them, and that's what Trump is saying. You know what? I don't care about Puerto Rico. Let them do it on their own. That's exactly, let them eat cake. And that's exactly what's going to be the things that will take them down as well.
Exactly. I mean, he doesn't care. That's the biggest thing that people have to understand. Even people on our side of the aisle sometimes have a hard time getting to that level that he really just doesn't care. If it doesn't affect him or put money in his pocket, he don't care. End of story. Let me see. There was
he doesn't care. You're right.
Shirley White had a question. Tariffs on China are already negatively impacting businesses that sell China products. Yeah, tell me about it. Will the tariffs be stopped before people's livelihoods are destroyed?
Trump was trying to bully those countries into doing his bidding, and some of it preemptively. I'm just going to hit you with the tariff and we'll see what happens in the negotiation. He's trying to force them to do what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? With some countries, they conceded, and those countries I'm angry with. But, other countries are saying, up yours, we're not going to concede to this.
Yeah.
And Trump didn't care again about what impact it had on the American people. It'll bring manufacturing back here. Oh, really? In order for that to happen, that's going to take 3 or 4 years. And what makes you think that companies are going to want to bring manufacturing back here? Because if a future president hits these companies with tariffs again, guess what? They're going to get screwed. So they're not going to bring. They're going to.
Where are you going to get the products to manufacture? Because a
Correct.
lot of them they're not native to here. So
Right. Where are
we
you going
got
to
to get them from elsewhere.
Where are you going to get the raw materials? And
Yeah.
so you're saying it's going to be cheaper to bring manufacturing here? Wrong, because you have to pay labor. You're trying to break the unions. That won't work. And the raw materials are going to be sky high. Bad idea. So
Very much
very
so.
bad idea. So unfortunately, livelihoods will be destroyed. I hate to say that.
Yeah, it
But
will.
I
It
think
will.
we all have to take our power back, and we all have to speak up and say, we will not tolerate this. We are with the citizens of the world that we do not and will not support these tariffs, and we will take action to do whatever we have to do to uh, to stop this totalitarian thing that's happening in this country.
Yeah.
Well,
And I put up Brenna's message real quick because number one, this affects me personally. I mean, I have a whole department of faculty that are a whole university of faculty across our whole university that are freaking out over this stuff. We've already had students had their visas revoked. You're talking graduate students, we had a grad student right after he first started pulling this stuff, who's from India. His father died suddenly. He went to his advisor and was like, what do I do? I'm afraid if I go home to mourn my father, they won't let me back into the country to finish out the year to get my PhD. And if I stay, then my family may be angry at me, and it's like, no student should have to make that kind of decision.
I agree.
At all.
Or be afraid if they write something that Trump might not like, then we're gonna pull your visa and there goes your education. That's happened before.
Or the young Pakistani woman who was at a protest. There's video. All she did was stand there and hold a sign. And she had the brown shirts come and snatch her off the street by campus when she was on her way to her vehicle. And this was all caught on CCTV, by the way.
Why we knew about it. They had to let her go, and then they said they don't know where she's at. Remember that?
They disappeared her. I mean, there was a student like running over there going, what are you doing to her? She's a student here. And
the other thing that's going to happen is those foreign governments are going to intercede and say, wait a minute, you deported this person who was not a citizen of the U.S. to somewhere without due process, and we are demanding, we're going to intercede in that country, it's El Salvador or whatever, with their government to get the person or the people back you've deported illegally. So it's really going to anger a lot of countries.
Well,
like the citizens of those countries that get deported, not back to that country, but to El Salvador, it's really going to make them angry. And they're going to we're going to cut ties with U.S. We're going to stop diplomatic relations.
It's like you have people that have been invited here for conferences or, that kind of thing, whether if it's education related or medically related or whatever, they're getting stopped at the airports and having their phones and passports taken away and then not allowed in the country. They're here for like a 3-day to 1-week stay to give a speech or a presentation.
Well, like I said, and this is huge, I think there's going to be a lot of countries that are going to say, because of all of this, because of their people, their citizens being deported to El Salvador and God knows where, without any due process, being kept there against their will, those countries are going to say, we are cutting diplomatic relations with the United States.
We've already...
Well, wait, but it's going to be huge. I'm telling you, a lot of countries are going to be doing it. And then I don't know the twist or the spin that Trump will try to put on it, but us American citizens will be saying like, wait a minute here. These people we've had good time with, we've had good relations with them. and they're going to be breaking diplomatic relations with the United States. I see many countries doing that. Many.
Oh, absolutely. It's already the tourism in all the states that get a lot of tourists in, especially now that spring's rolling in and summer's almost here. It's like down through the toilet.
The tourism
And
industry here is really hurting. It's Americans traveling overseas. That's okay, but the people from Europe coming here, like
they're
Canadians
not coming.
Florida, the snowbirds are like, we're not doing it, and it's going to
Yeah,
hurt the economy. But you know what?
very much
Trump
so.
and his cronies did this to you.
Exactly.
The
And
people,
there are countries that are issuing warnings to their citizens to not come here,
right?
that we are now considered a dangerous location for anybody that doesn't fit their very narrow view of what a person is supposed
And
to
we
be.
used to be one of the safest places for people to come.
Yeah.
And it's like we've never had that tourist warning, never. And I think that it's going to really, really hurt the tourism industry. And I don't know. I don't see Trump fulfilling his full term, nor do I see Shady Vance in office. When the Pope tells him what you're doing is wrong, and he says, "Oh, I stand by what I'm doing." Like, how can you call yourself a Catholic or Christian and justify that? And Trump's not Christian. He doesn't give one iota about that. The only thing he cares about is, stuffing his own pocket. That's about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are so many things that he's doing that's going to damage us in so many ways that most people haven't even considered yet, that it's once they come to the realization of it, I think it's going to even create the shock value that much higher.
Well,
Well, Mel, we're like right at an hour here, darling, and I don't want to exhaust you because I know you got Aloha Tuesday tomorrow night, and I'll be backstage for that. So
there you go, sweetie.
To help out, and so
thanks for having me. This has been a lot.
You're welcome. This was fun. It's been a while since we did just a what anything goes type of thing. So,
Right.
Thank you for coming, and thank all of y'all for coming. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to all the questions. We tried, but we just couldn't do it. So go put them in tomorrow night for Aloha Tuesday into their Mel and Arthur's chats. And, hopefully we can get through those then. So I know they try to get as many as possible. And do you have anything coming up other than Aloha Tuesday?
Aloha Tuesday, Thursday with Kevin Chandler. I'm going to start doing some morning moments with Mel again. I keep them about 20 or 30 minutes, but I think with the Pope dying and some of the politicians here, like the Marjorie Taylor Greens, who were so disrespectful and mean-spirited, I think, there's just so much going on. But I've really enjoyed this tonight. We got to do it again. I've got to run, but Sherry, thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Y'all will catch me this week. Wednesday Sisters, Thursday Golden Girls, Saturday night the Slumber Party. Just check. I'll be posted later my schedule. And thank you again, Mel. And y'all have a good week. Smile. It's almost Tuesday. Trying to think of something. All right, everybody. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see you soon.